Well, welcome everyone. My name is Jim Sweet, and I'm a member of Dundas Works. And I want to thank you for choosing to join us here this evening. I want to especially thank the candidates for willingly participating in this event, but more importantly for putting themselves forward to run in the October 21st federal election. I can imagine it takes a great deal of time, effort, and sacrifice for both yourselves and your families. So thank you very much. We acknowledge our presence on the ancestral land of the Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people under the Dishwood One Spoon Wampum Belt. The intent of this agreement is for all nations sharing this territory to do so responsibly, respectfully, and sustainably in perpetuity. We respect the long-standing relationships with the local indigenous communities of the Mississauga of the New Credit First Nation and the Six Nations of the Grand River. Should it be necessary to evacuate the building, there is certainly the main doors that I expect everyone came through as an exit. There is an exit down this little hall here to the outside. And for those of you in the gymnasium watching this on the TV screen, there are exits at the back of the gymnasium. The washrooms are located just off the entranceway as well. Okay? I should also mention, in the unlikely event anyone has a cell phone with them, should it be necessary, tonight's meeting is not a debate. The candidates will be given the opportunity to answer questions that were taken from submissions to the Dundas Works email and website, and also suggestion boxes in faith groups that were distributed throughout the ride. Our purpose here is to listen to what the candidates have to say. In this regard, we expect the audience will be respectful and refrain from any cheering, booing, and clapping during the responses to the questions. Please save your applause until the end of the program. And with that, I'll now turn the meeting over to Rick Spies, who will act as the moderator.
Thank you, Jim. It's a pleasure to be here to moderate this meeting. Again, welcome to all. We don't get a lot of opportunity in an election campaign to see all the candidates, or a number of them all at once, and get a sense of their persons as well as their views. But tonight is one of those. Jim underlined just now that this is not meant to be a debate, but a question and answer, with us all able to listen in, and for candidates to present their views clearly to us all. And so, I will ask that you do follow that. I want to introduce candidates this evening. And first I'm going to ask Dr. Sevigny to come forward. Standing beside me here is not a candidate, but Dr. Alex Sevigny, who has a position at McMaster University. He is here tonight as the communications committee person from the Liberal campaign, because many of you will be aware that our Liberal candidate and our incumbent MP lost her mother just these last couple of days. Irene Tassi died October 11th, I think. Tonight is the night that they are having vigil prayers down at the funeral home, and the funeral mass is tomorrow. So we want to extend our sympathy to the whole Tassi family and the friends of the family in this time of loss. Extending our condolences, we pray that they will know blessing and grace in and through the sadness, now and in the days to come. So, unfortunately, we don't have Filomena with us, but we have all the other candidates. I'm going to just quickly introduce them. First here is Daniel Ricottone from the People's Party of Canada. Next is Bert Laranjo from the Conservative Party of Canada. And Yousaf Malik from the New Democratic Party of Canada. And on the end there is Victoria Galea from the Green Party of Canada. And this is the last time that you'll get to applause because I'm going to invite you to greet them with applause. Every candidate is given 3 minutes for an opening statement, and following that we have questions. The questions, many of you would have responded. I know Dundas Works and the Association of Dundas Churches put out to the community the possibility of submitting questions. They collected, I actually don't know how many, but it was quite a large number of questions came in. They sorted them into categories and sifted through them to see if they could then find a question that best summarized that area. For a couple of areas, we're able tonight, we think, to have 2 questions, which is all to the good. The candidates will each be given the chance to answer a question in 2 minutes. There are timekeepers at the back who alert me, and the candidate, more importantly, to the time that they have left. And we're going to ask that you respect that as best as you can. I've been told that they're known to shut off the mic in any case. So, well, you get the signal. It's even if you're not quite done, maybe just to say, well, that's all the time I have for now. At the end, then, there will be 2 or 3 minutes for closing remarks also. I think that's all I need to say. Questions will be posed by members of the audience. I'm a retired minister. I almost called you a congregation. Members of the audience tonight. The categories are 7. There's a category of climate change, environment, category of economy, foreign policy, housing policy, Indigenous settler relations to the Indigenous peoples of Canada, one that's called democracy or participation in Canadian democracy, and another that's what are the top issues you see, yourself as a candidate. And as I said, we're hoping we might get a couple of questions in some of those categories. Friends? We'll begin, and your first opening statement from the Liberal Party.
Thank you very much. I'll read the statement that Filomena has written, so it's in her voice. I've been honored to serve Hamilton and Canada for the last 4 years as Member of Parliament for Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas, and Minister of Seniors. Together, we've brought much success to this city with over $500 million in federal investments. These investments have provided over $100 million to McMaster University and Mohawk College, $230 million to support our advanced manufacturing sector, hundreds of thousands of dollars to support social justice organizations like Empowerment Squared and the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion, and significant investments in our innovative startups like those at the Hamilton Forge. And this is just to name a few. We've invested heavily in infrastructure with a focus on green, social, and public transit investments. Here at home, we invested $37 million into the Hamilton Street Railway and $20 million into the carbon-neutral Ron Joyce Center at Mohawk College. We introduced the Canada Child Benefit, which just in Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas, has helped 18,000 children and 10,000 families have better lives in our way. It's been an emancipatory policy for women and has had enormous positive social effect. We've invested in our cultural spaces with a significant $2.6 million for the Ancaster Memorial Arts Centre, for which unfortunately the provincial government, led by our Premier Doug Ford, cancelled his multi-million-dollar commitment. Seniors have been a strong focus for our government. One of the first things our government did was to reduce the age of eligibility for old age security from 67 to 65, after it was raised by the previous government. As Minister of Seniors, I've worked incredibly hard to secure measures to make sure our aging population enjoys a dignified and secure retirement. We made enrollment in CCP automatic, and we increased the guaranteed income supplement, measures that will help thousands of vulnerable seniors. We also increased funding to the New Horizons for Seniors program, which will improve facilities and invest in programs to keep seniors engaged in community life, as well as fight elder fraud and elder abuse. I know that many people have told the Minister that those programs have been life-changing. Our government made a commitment to the environment, including putting a price on pollution and making unprecedented investments in green infrastructure and technology. We also introduced a single-use plastics ban and an oceans protections plan. We know there's much more to do to fight climate change and to make Hamilton and Canada an even better place to live and work. In 2015, I felt a vocation to serve our community in federal politics, to improve the lives of Californians and Canadians. We've made great progress in the last 4 years. We've accomplished so much together during the last 4 years. In fact, I look forward to working with you to keep on delivering for Hamilton and for Canada.
Bert, Laranjo.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start off by thanking everybody for attending tonight, and for the Dundas Church Association, and for the Dundas Works for putting on this great event tonight here. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening for attending. I'd like to start off by expressing my sincere, heartfelt condolences to Ms. Tassi during this difficult time that I couldn't even imagine that she's going through. I know she'd love to be here with us because of different circumstances. You know, this just kind of helps me realize that in politics, oftentimes we forget that there's people behind the logo. And it's at times like this that I look around this table, including Ms. Tassi, and I'm proud to be running alongside all these candidates who have worked so hard and have put their best forward. We're all invested in the pride that we have for this country and the pride that we have for our city, and we want to do what's best. We may not always agree on the issues, but one thing is for sure, we always have everybody's best interests at heart. So I'd like to just say, I hope that Filomena finds some peace during this difficult time that she's going through, and my thoughts are with her. The reason I entered this race is because I look at my family, and I look at other families like mine who are working hard in order to be able to get ahead, to give our kids a little bit more of a future. I think of my parents who came to Canada, and they had the Canadian dream. Canadian dream to get ahead, and the Canadian dream has seeped away a bit under the Liberals. We've seen an increase in taxes, we've seen an increase in red tape. It's made it very difficult for families like mine to be able to plan ahead. The Conservative platform is totally focused on helping families get ahead. We're looking at making sure that we cut the universal taxes in order to help you keep more of your money at the end of the year. We're going to be taking GST off of home heating, and that's going to help keeping our costs down, along with many other things that we put into place, like incentives for healthcare and for infrastructure. We all know that under Justin Trudeau, life has become a lot more difficult. And us, as the Canadian Conservatives, we're focused on bringing Canada back in order and to get the respect that we had at the world stage. As you all know, I'm a nurse. My background is of service and of being there when people are most vulnerable. These are the qualities that I bring to you as your future member of Parliament in Ottawa. I will always be there when you need me, and I will never leave you dry when you come for help. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Daniel.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. My name is Daniel Ricottone, and I'm here tonight representing the People's Party of Canada. Over the past year, the PPC became the fastest growing party in the history of our great nation. This is because we've started a common sense revolution. We are at a defining moment in our history. The question before you, the Canadian people, is, as you look at this country, do you feel what's being done is satisfactory? Polls show the overwhelming majority of Canadians do not believe that our current Prime Minister is capable of running an ethical government. In comparison, there are Conservatives who see Mr. Scheer subtly sliding left to appease his detractors in order to gain votes. The PPC believes in free speech, common sense, and the rule of law, as well as the security, prosperity, and national sovereignty of Canada. We do not share Mr. Trudeau's sentiment that Canada has no core identity. We reject this message. And unlike other parties, we will not capitulate to political correctness. We will fight for the silent majority of Canadians. The only way we win this time is if politics, as usual, loses. It is my honor and privilege to be here before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Yousaf.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Our thoughts and prayers are with Filomena and her family. Of course, this is a tragic loss, and as someone who's experienced the loss of my mother at a young age, I can understand how difficult this time is for her. And Bert is absolutely right when recognizing that everyone here is human, and that's why we need to understand that as we move forward and have a conversation at the national stage. It is great to be here with everyone today, and I'm Yousaf, Malik, your NDP candidate for Hamilton West Ancaster, Dundas. Throughout the conversation, I'm hoping you'll get to know a little bit more about me and give me your support on October 21st. I'm proud to call Hamilton my home, and I've lived in the city for the last 20 years. It is where I've attended all my levels of schooling, from elementary school to my bachelor's in economics and master's in economic policy from McMaster University. During this time, I've successfully ran a not-for-profit organization, participated in many public forums, and led a campaign on Hamilton West last year to improve our education system. I have used my background and passion for helping others in my current work in municipal government. Throughout my career, I've focused on creating fair policies to help families access affordable housing and good jobs, and help entrepreneurs start and grow their business. As a father, I believe our government should be focused on getting real results for families so that we can take care of each other, live good lives, and ensure the same opportunities available for our kids and grandkids. We have 4 generations living in my household, from my grandma, who's 85 years young, my dad, my beautiful wife Sabah, and our 10-month-old son Yasin. I'm running because I see firsthand why we need to make investment in people. I know it's getting harder for everyday people to make ends meet. Going door to door, I hear how people are fed up. They're fed up with having to use their credit card to pay for medication, not knowing month to month how they're going to pay for this. Where students are fed up and worried about being able to pay for school and their rising debt levels. Where working people are fed up of not knowing if they're going to get the pensions they rightfully deserve. Where elders in our community are worried about their retirement. While canvassing a few weeks ago, I met Joanne, who manages a building on West Mountain. After working 35 years, she's in a position where she can't retire because on her pension, she can't afford the rents in the city. She's not the only senior who feels neglected by her government. That is why I'm asking for your support on October 21st, because I want to fix these along with it, a lot of other issues facing Ancaster and Dundas, including the climate change crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Victoria.
Hello. I'd just like to build on the point and really express that my deepest condolences are with Filomena and her family at this very tragic and unfortunate time. My name is Victoria Galea, and I'm your Green Party candidate for Hamilton West and Ancaster Dundas in this upcoming federal election. I would like to thank you all for attending this important all-candidate debate. A big thank you to Rick for moderating and the Association of Dundas Churches for hosting. I would also like to note the important land acknowledgement provided, as the Green Party believes we must put these words into action and bring true reconciliation to the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. This riding is very important to me, as I've been a lifelong resident of the West Mountain part of the constituency, where my family has lived for 5 generations. my Honors Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science, and my Master's in International Relations from McMaster University provide me with an in-depth look at climate emergency, electoral reform, and Indigenous reconciliation. Throughout my Master's, I also heavily researched climate change with my final major research paper looking at the contradictions of the Liberal Party's 2015 platform and how they lacked follow-through over the next 4 years, investing and nationalizing a pipeline while not making the right investments in renewable energy. During my time at McMaster, I volunteered for many nonprofits, including Free the Children, the World Wildlife Foundation, and Social Justice at MAC. I've also hosted and led various litter cleanups for Bayfront Park, the Bruce Trail, and the Hamilton to Brantford Rail Trail. I've been volunteering for the Green Party of Canada for the last 2 years as CEO of Hamilton West Ancaster Dundas Riding Association. It is both my goal and my dream to become elected as a Green Party MP so that I can bring to the forefront of political discussion sustainable policies addressing climate change. This is the forefront of my campaign, as climate change is the single most important defining challenge of our time. I want to help contribute to this change by pushing for legislation that will create more jobs in a new, equitable, low-carbon economy and a brighter future for my generation and generations to follow. When I'm out in the community canvassing, I hear great things about climate change, and the community feels it's the right time for the Green Party to take power. Thank you so much for listening, as your vote matters in this upcoming election, and together we can change the face of politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. So we move to our first topic and first question. Who's got the mic? Even though you're close. And this topic, the first topic is on our Indigenous peoples' relations.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission identified 94 calls to action. Number 44 states, "We call upon the Government of Canada to develop a national action plan, strategies, and other concrete measures to achieve the goals of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. What will you do to ensure call to action number 44 is achieved?"
The first responder will be Yousaf.
We as NDP are committed to true nation-to-nation relationship and reconciliation with the First Nations. The first step towards any meaningful reconciliation is recognizing that we have treaties in place across North America with Indigenous people. We need to not only respect these treaties, but recognize that there are terms and conditions in place which are being neglected. As an NDP government, our plan is to have true nation-to-nation conversation so we can have safe housing, so we can invest in clean drinking water, and have access to healthcare and quality education. Unlike the Liberal government, we will not take Indigenous children to court, and we accept the findings that we as a nation need to invest an equal amount for Indigenous children. Thank you.
Thank you, Yousaf. Victoria.
Thank you. First and foremost, we must bring an end to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in our country, as per the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We must also respect and hold high the Indigenous titles and sacred land treaties that are in place. The Green Party will end drinking water and boiling water advisories by investing and upgrading critical infrastructure to ensure safe water and access in every community. We must also improve food security in northern communities by consulting with residents on Arctic farming, working with nonprofit groups to build greenhouses or hydroponic towers, and funding education programs for nutrition and horticulture. We also prioritize the high-quality, safe, and affordable housing, particularly in the north, and ensure the equitable distribution of resources for energy-efficient retrofits. We must also educate non-Indigenous Canadians on the histories, customs, traditions, and cultures of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Turtle Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Bert.
So for me, I've been fortunate that my career has actually taken me to places like Atawapaskat, Moosonee, Moose Factory, where I've done some work with the hospitals to help them bring them in line with the hospitals that we expect in cities like here in Hamilton. I've been able to actually live in Atawapaskat for small stints, Moosonee, Moose Factory, and when I came back, I remember looking at my wife and saying there's so much work that needs to be done. And I was really happy to hear that our party is committed to making sure that the Indigenous community has equal access to all the resources that we have as a Canadian nation. Every child, every man, every woman deserves to have equal access, and that's what we're focused on. I had the opportunity to tour the Northern College that is in Moosonee when I was up there doing some work. And what a great college that's there where we can invest in actually bringing some of the courses to the community to train people to invest right there in the community. Selfishly, I'd love to see some of the nursing being done up there in that college where then they could provide the care that's sensitive to the Indigenous communities. So I have been there, I have seen it, and yes, there's a lot of work to do, and our party is very committed to making sure that every Indigenous person has equal rights that you and I have if living anywhere in Canada.
Thank you. And Daniel.
Thank you. Well, firstly, we need to address the Indigenous water issues. Maxime Bernier, our party leader, has said this is a top priority for him. And our party also wishes to replace the Indian Act with new legal framework that will guarantee equal rights to Aboriginal people. We want to establish individual property rights on reserves, which will empower residents and give them increased control over their lives. We want to achieve this with the cooperation and approval of the Aboriginal people. We will also keep the First Nations' budget and honor all of the treaties.
Thank you. Our second question. This question is in the area of housing. Can you introduce yourself also?
Hi, I'm a resident of Ancaster. John Price is my name. Regarding housing, the challenges of social justice and poverty intersect in the issue of housing availability and affordability. What will you do to ensure that a mix of home ownership and rental housing is accessible for all ages and incomes?
Okay, and the first responder is Victoria.
Hi, thank you so much. A lot of people don't talk about the fact that housing impacts a lot of the other aspects of your life. Without housing, you can't have things like food security or a job or access to clean drinking water. And so that's why the Green Party is going to invest $10 million into the housing industry, because that is what's important to bringing justice to all Canadians and making sure that we can access all of these other important issues. As we are the Green Party, we also want to be innovative with this housing crisis, especially here in Hamilton. And we can do that through things like tiny homes. So we need to change the legislation and legal surroundings of the accessibility and ability to even create a tiny home in Hamilton, which is inaccessible now. So we want to make sure that not only we invest in our housing market, but that we also make sure that everyone has access to a home, which will be done through a guaranteed livable income. The Green Party is the only party that supports a guaranteed livable income, and it is the only way to ensure that no one falls below the poverty line, because as we have seen, politicians change what you are considered in or out of poverty, or what age you qualify for things like old age security. So we just want to make sure that no one falls below the cracks and that everyone's caught with a guaranteed livable income. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel.
Thank you. Well, last year there were 37,000 new apartments built nationwide, but unfortunately the demand increased by 50,000 units, and we cannot keep up with the demand if we continue to balloon our population. Now, our solution is a little bit different, but please hear me out. At 350,000 immigrants annually, Mr. Trudeau is proposing that we import a Manitoba every 4 years, and this is not sustainable. We've set our immigration numbers at 150,000 a year, which per capita is equal to the United States and the European nations. And we also wish to raise the percentage of economic immigrants from 26%, which is far too low, to 50%, which can also help with our labor shortages, which is a win-win. Harvard Harvard studies have proven if you want to raise the wages of the working poor, you have to lower immigration. If you have an oversupply of newcomers, it keeps wages low and drives the cost of homes up. So that's a lose-lose.
Bert.
So our party has taken a very close look at this. It wasn't that long ago that I went to buy my first home and got approved my mortgage without a problem. Friends of mine that are trying to get into the home ownership nowadays are having a much harder time, and they're living and making decent incomes. So our party is going to be looking at the stress test. The stress test has made it very difficult for people to enter into the market. I've actually spoken to many people who are in mortgage brokers at the doors right here in our riding, and they've told me how they disagree with the way that the stress test has been developed, because it's virtually impossible for anybody my age to get a home. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the mandatory insurance that you get on your mortgage. The premium is very high at the moment, so we are going to look at lowering that interest or that premium on the mortgage insurance. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to actually look at increasing the amortization period to 30 years for first-time home buyers. So we know that buying a home is the biggest commitment you can make, but you don't want to live just to have a house. You want to make sure that you're able to live a normal life and give your children the same abilities that anybody who has that opportunity can do. So this, along with the universal tax cuts that we're doing, along with some of the tax incentives that we're giving to families, like helping them, putting their kids through sports and through added education where they get tax credit at the end, taking the GST off of home heating. So these are other things that we will run in conjunction with this to ensure that home ownership is a reality once again for young people. And that should free up a lot of the rental homes, and that will hopefully bring down the cost of rent as well.
Thank you. Yousaf.
Everyone should have a place to call home. Right now, far too many people are struggling, and I see this in my day job in social housing policy, where we see seniors, families, on the brink of homelessness or facing homelessness, where it takes 17 years for someone who applies for a housing to get housed. Clearly, the system's not working. Far too many people are being left behind. We see that in social housing. We also see that in the housing affordability sector, where young people are not able to buy a home because the prices keep going up. They keep going up 300%, 400%, where our incomes stay the same. That's why, under the NDP government, we have a plan to make real investment in housing. The private sector is only building homes that are not affordable. That's why we need to make sure that we build housing, and we have a federal government that gets re-involved in housing. During the 1980s, 1990s, the federal government was heavily involved in creating more rental housing, more affordable housing across the spectrum. We see that in our own city. Under an NDP government, we will invest in 500,000 affordable homes, and half of this will be in the first term in office. This will create real solutions, will create real homes right here in our city for people to be able to have a home. Thank you.
Thank you. Our third question is in the area of economy.
Oh, that's my question. I'm Bob James. I'm a resident of Dundas for many years. The question is this: tax havens, which are unavailable to the majority of Canadians, contribute to the growing wealth and income disparity in our country. What suggestions do you have, and what plans does your party have to create a better economic balance for all people living in Canada?
First respondent is Victoria.
Thank you again. This is a serious and important issue. As you may know, the Green Party is the only party that has fully costed our platform, and this is one of the ways that when I talk about other things like free post-secondary education, this is how we're going to pay for it. The current Liberal government allows for millions and billions of dollars every year to be saved through tax loopholes and safe havens, and this is unacceptable. That is why we must close these tax loopholes, as well as start taxing corporations that have never paid federal taxes in their entire existence. As we know, Amazon made $1 billion in profits last year and didn't pay a single penny in federal taxes. I know that when I get my paycheck, I pay a portion to federal taxes, and it just means that everybody needs to do their fair share. By also moving to a green new economy, it's a job ratio of 4-to-1 for water, wind, and solar over coal and oil combined. The other parties like us to think that with moving towards our climate crisis and into renewable energy, that this is going to be a negative thing for our economy, and that is simply not the case. It is a $27 trillion global economy that we want to participate and stop falling behind. Our green new economy will create more for every Canadian and will help support our other income assessments as well. Thank you so much.
Yousaf. Growing income inequality in our country is a real problem, and it's a problem that we need to address. Right now, our tax system allows the rich, the large corporations, to take advantage of loopholes that the Liberal government promised that they would end 4 years ago. But here we are, where the loopholes still exist, where working people have to pay higher sets of taxes, a higher share of taxes, because the rich don't pay their fair share. We need to not only close those taxes, but we need to make sure we're growing our economy. We can broaden our economy and create opportunities for everyone. We can do this by making sure we have real investment across our spectrum, whether it's create for more affordable housing, which will create more jobs, or our green plan, which suggests that we can have economic growth while making sure we're tackling our climate change crisis. By investing in things like energy retrofits of homes, energy retrofits of large apartment buildings, we will create good jobs, but at the same time, grow our economy. People are the drivers of our economy, and that's what we need to take into account. Whether it's a Liberal government or a Conservative government, they have discounted people and have said, we will invest our tax dollars in large corporations in hopes that they will create a few jobs or give a few dollars to their workers. We've seen this fail over and over and over again. That's why we need to make sure we're investing in people and putting people first, because that's how we will grow our economy. And as an economist, I can tell you that that is one of the biggest sectors of our economy is household spending. That's how we're going to get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel.
Thank you. Well, the PPC plans to balance the budget in 2 years. We will completely abolish corporate welfare, which will save $5 billion. We will also not give $2.3 billion in foreign aid to corrupt dictatorships or waste money on things like giving China millions to develop their pipelines. With a balanced budget, we can then introduce a simplified two-tiered tax system where anyone making under $100,000 a year will only have to pay 15% income tax, which is the current lowest bracket. We will also completely abolish capital gains and home gains tax, as well as reduce the farm tax to 10%. And we want to open the provinces, for business. We don't want Canadians being forced to pay more for goods and services. We want to reduce equalization payments and change the formula so that it stops being a permanent welfare program for poorer provinces. And we also are the only party talking about abolishing supply management on dairy, poultry, and eggs, because this system only represents 10% of Canadian farmers. And by doing this, we will save families an average of $400 a year. Supply management is not fair to the Canadian consumer. It artificially inflates the price of products, which hurts the poor. It's unfair, and we're saying no to crony capitalism.
Thank you. Bert.
So our plan is looking at making sure the economy is beneficial for everyone. So we start with our families, making sure that there's more that you get to keep in your pocket at the end of your hard working week. We're looking at making sure there's tax incentives for you, there's tax breaks. Then we migrate to make sure that simultaneously we're making sure that it's small businesses, which are like the backbone of Ancaster, Dundas, and Hamilton West, have the grounds that are needed to be able to succeed. We know that they are the backbone of our economy. Right now, the small businesses are struggling. So we're going to remove a lot of the undue red tape that's there, and we're going to make sure that the small businesses have a road to success. Next thing we're going to do is also we're going to make sure that
we take away the corporate welfare. We're going to make sure we don't give to $1 million to Loblaws for freezers. We're going to make sure that Bombardier, every time they win a bid to build some streetcars or build buses, that we're not going behind and giving them money to do that, build a road on those. So our plan is focused on making sure that anywhere from our normal household to big corporations, that there is a road to succeed. Because we know if there's a strong economy, we will attract other businesses to invest right here in Canada. The other thing we're doing is we're making sure that the big online companies are not going to be getting away without paying taxes. We're going to follow the European model to make sure that they too pay their fair share of taxes. So this is all things that we're working to make sure that our economy starts to boom once again and we all benefit from it.
Thank you very much. The fourth area is one that is called democracy, about participation. Would you introduce yourself and question?
My name is Norma Coe. I'm also a Dundas resident. And in regards to democracy, many people often choose not to vote because they are disillusioned about the system of voting or feel that promises made by the parties will not be kept. What suggestions do you have that may increase the number of citizens, including eligible younger people, to vote?
Daniel, will you lead us up?
Sure, thank you so much for your question. I think it's extremely important that we all exercise our right to vote. There are people across the world who die for this right, and I think that a lot of this can come down to the education level. I think there's programs in place where they encourage youth to vote. I think we need to have easier access for the elderly in order to be able to get out and vote, and I also think that we need to be more comfortable with agreeing to disagree in this country, where sometimes people are afraid to talk politics because it's becoming more of an increasingly polarized issue. And I think whether people have realized it or not, free speech has been under attack in this nation and also in the Western world. Free speech is the foundation of a democracy, and you cannot build the house without a foundation. We've seen leaders muzzle free speech by labeling what they disagree with as hate speech, and modern progressivism keeps narrowing the lines on what they consider hate speech. This obsession with political correctness and identity politics has driven us further apart, and it's antithetical to Martin Luther King Jr.'s message, which was we're to judge people by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. So this is why the PPC does not like identity politics. We find it divisive, and we do not like political correctness. If anyone remembers the late great film critic Roger Ebert, who was a Pulitzer Prize winner, he once described political correctness as thus, that it was the fascism of our time, and the very idea that we have to speak in very narrow boundaries for fear of offending somebody. And if that's what we're doing, then we're practicing ventriloquism. I think Canadians are tired of political correctness, and tired of identity politics, and tired of online censorship as well, which is an important issue. If we lose free speech, as sure as night follows day, everything else will slowly start to erode. So we need to be comfortable with having a difference of opinion and agree to disagree, because at the end of the day, we are all fellow Canadians. Thank you.
Yousaf?
Thank you. It's past time that we have a fair electoral system, so every Canadian is heard. Right now, our political spectrum is one where we have the Conservative Party talking about how we're going to be giving tax cuts and how the Liberals are not doing a good job. We have the Liberal Party talking about voters and scaring voters into saying, please vote for us because we want to keep the Liberal Conservatives out. It's time that we have a better conversation. And that's how we're going to increase voter turnout. And the way we can do that is through proportional representation, where 15% of the votes will actually mean 15% of the seats. And it will end this politics where no one is proposing any real actions, where no one is talking about, except for the NDP, what we're going to be doing for you. That's what we need to do. We need to talk about how we're going to be moving forward, how we're going to be investing in housing, how we're going to be providing better health care so it works for us, how we're going to be protecting pensions, how we're going to be investing in our public transit system. how we're going to keep our public education system better. These are the things that I'm fighting for, and these are the things that matter to me. So that's why I'm here to have this conversation and say that enough is enough. We need a better system. Thank you.
Victoria?
Thank you. This year was supposed to be the first time the federal government ran a non-first past the post electoral system. And back in 2015, Justin Trudeau stood there and rallied the crowd saying that our system is broken and this will be the last time we run on first past the post. Another election campaign promise broken. We need proportional representation so that people can stop voting for the lesser of two evils and make sure that they can actually vote with their head and their heart, because we know that the Green Party is the only party with sustainable climate action and with fiscal responsibility. As you noted in the question, young people need to get out there to vote. We aren't talked about in our current election situation because we don't vote, and that's a big problem. And I just want to let all the millennials and young people out there know that millennials do outnumber baby boomers, and we can bring an end to this traditional two-party voting system, and you can vote who you actually want to vote for and say no to strategic voting. We must ensure that political parties adhere to the truth in advertising policies that all other advertising corporations are subject to, because we don't need the spread of misinformation, and we must ensure that people who are online are who they say they are by having verified people on social media and on all internet platforms. So thank you for that important question, and I urge all young people to take to the polls the same anger, frustration, and demand for action that I took to as running as a candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bert?
So the answer to that question for me is, I think in politics, we have to hold ourselves with integrity and remember that we're here to serve the public. And by doing that, we have to serve as role models. I'm so proud when I walked into my office and I looked at the diverse age spans that I have of volunteers, and ranging anywhere from 16 years old right up to 80 years old. And what I've done in my campaign in order to help people realize that you're voting for me as your representative is, I've told you the positive message, what I have to offer, and I've tried to help you see who I am and what I've done in my life and how that can benefit our riding right here. You won't hear me go on an attack on one of my colleagues or the party, but you'll always hear me say is, this is what I've got to offer. And I think that's attracted a lot of people to my camp and has helped me build the volunteer base that I have. I had actually a teacher come in the other day, and I felt so proud because she came in and she said she was going from office to office collecting literature from all the different candidates so she could take her grade 6 class and help them see what the different parties stood for and that they could read about the local candidates that were running and their riding. That to me is democracy at its finest. And I was so proud of that teacher. I gave her a hug and I said, good for you. And these are the things, the little things we can do. And I think hold ourselves accountable as politicians and forget that we're politicians, but actually remember that we're people and we're here to serve our community and to do whatever we can to make our community the best community we can in this country.
Thank you very much. The next question area is climate change. I think it's Wayne back there.
I'm Wayne Poole, and I'm a long-time resident of Dundas as well. Climate change, notwithstanding nuclear war, climate change is the greatest existential threat to life on Earth, not just human life, all life. And Canada is warming at twice the global rate. What initiatives will your party take to reduce carbon emissions 50% by 2030?
Yousaf.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for bringing up this question. It's one that's very, very important to me as well. As a father, I'm concerned about the future for my son. I want him to be able to live in a Hamilton that I love and grew up in, so that he can enjoy, the beautiful nature that we have. So proud to be here representing NDP because we have a real plan to tackle climate change. One that involves making real investment towards energy retrofits of large homes, energy retrofits for apartment buildings, investing in our public transit, while protecting and creating good jobs. At the same time, we want to make sure that we have overall protections for our water bodies, as well as our air. Right now, only 300 of the big lakes are protected under the federal jurisdiction, and we have many, many more. And we want to be able to enhance a lot of the protections in place. At the same time, we want to make sure that we have a stronger climate change target than the Liberals and the Conservatives. Because only through meaningful change will we be able to get to the 1.5 degrees Celsius climate change target set for the UN. We will achieve this by closing the loopholes on large polluters, making sure that we have a carbon system that works for Canadians, where we are able to save the average family money by providing the energy retrofits that I talked about, and at the same time, lowering our greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Bert.
So our party is very committed to the environment. Our first platform that we put out was on the environment. It's a very long document. It's a 60-page, 50 different action points that we're going to take on helping the environment. You can actually find it at arealplan.ca. In that plan, we outline a number of things, but I'll just summarize in about 2 or 3 different categories. So the first one is we're going to be very committed to making sure we invest in green technology and green certification. So we want the high emitters to be investing in the technology that is going to bring the emissions down. A lot of this technology is, we want it to be built right here in Canada, and selfishly, I want to be the first one in line to get some of that money to bring to McMaster Innovation Center, where some of that great work is already happening, and so we can build on it. Secondly, we want to make sure that everybody feels like they're doing their part. That's why we're giving some tax credits if you do any retrofits to your home, in order to bring it in line with some of the environmental standards. We're also bringing back the green public transit credit, so if you take public transit, there is a tax credit that you also get for encouraging people to take the trains into work, take more of their public transportations. And the third, we know that this is not something we can do on our own. We need to bring the world together on this one. So we're going to be spearheading a global committee, which will bring everybody from low to high emitters to the table, and we will work with the other countries as to put repercussions on those countries who choose not to take climate change serious. So I'm very proud of our platform. I encourage you to look at it on arealplan.ca. It's clearly outlined the various things that we're going to do. We are not going to be introducing the carbon tax. We are taking that out because we have seen that that money did not go to help the environment. We went back into patching some of the holes in the budget. But we are committed on actionable items that are going to help the environment and bring us into the line what we need.
Thank you. Daniel.
Thank you. Our party is quite different when it comes to our views on this because we want to make sure that we have all the facts first before we make a move. What we are against, the PPC, is climate alarmism because we know that people who have no hopes are very easy to control. So it's important that we keep Canadians rational, thinking clearly and objectively. We must look at the facts. The BBC reported that a century ago, weather-related disasters killed 500,000 people per year. Today, it's 20,000 a year. This is a reduction of 95%. NASA releases studies showing mass gains of Antarctic ice sheets greater than its losses. Since 2005, Ontario has reduced its emissions by 22%, and our nation as a whole, the second largest country on Earth, accounts for less than 2% of the world's global emissions. A carbon tax is not the answer, and outlawing all your vehicles by 2030 is not the answer. We must look at results that work. In 2017, the United States led all countries in reducing carbon emissions. This was confirmed by Forbes magazine. This was accomplished without a carbon tax or the Paris Climate Accord. The Toronto Star last year wrote, carbon taxes do not hurt emissions, nor help battle climate change, and they were correct. The carbon tax is an inefficient half measure. It's used to take your money. Australia scrapped its carbon tax because it crippled their businesses and their middle class. The PPC will not impose a federal carbon tax nor cap and trade, what the Conservatives are proposing. We will delegate these matters to the provincial level. That being said, we will address Indigenous water issues. It is a top priority for us. We will also address the 250 billion liters of sewage and toxic waste still being discharged every year in our waterways. It's unacceptable. Water quality is something we will address at the federal level and must be looked at right away.
And Victoria.
Thank you. I don't know if some of you may know this, but the Green Party is well known for our climate action plan. We have hope. It is the Green Party plan. The Arctic is literally on fire. So that is why we must reduce emissions of greenhouse gases by 60% by 2030. The United Nations and the IPCC report told us that we had to reduce at least to 45% in order to have a 50-50 chance of avoiding catastrophic climate change. And that is why we must reduce to 60% to increase our chances. All of the other parties aren't meeting these goals. The greenwashing of the other campaigns is unacceptable. They fooled us in 2015, and don't let them fool you again. We must say no to pipelines, including the LNG pipeline and the Trans Mountain pipeline. As the other parties have said that they will recognize and go forward with the Trans Mountain and support the LNG, this is unacceptable. No pipelines will ever meet the criteria of both combating climate emissions and Indigenous reconciliation. These are things that do not go hand in hand. We will also invest in the Youth Environment Service Corps. We want to increase jobs of 40,000 across Canada for young people to do things like reforestation, remove waste out of our waterways, and clean up our earth. We must stop giving fossil fuel corporations subsidies and must invest in everyday Canadians instead. Our current polluter pays principle, conducted by the Liberal government, still leaves out half of our major polluters across the country. This is unacceptable. And I don't know about you, but only $150 in a tax credit to maybe change some light bulbs isn't where we're going to get in order to become net zero. We must retrofit all homes and all new buildings. We must switch to electric vehicles and change over current vehicles to become electric. We can do better, and we have to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Friends, we're halfway through the questions. I know when I was a preacher, you needed to throw in just a little bit of a break. I am going to suggest to you that we're hearing some real differences between the different parties. We're hearing characters come through, and we're certainly blessed to be hearing 4 people sitting here, and I know Filomena would be added to it too, who are all policy wonks. These are really excellent answers. So I'll invite you to applaud them halfway through. Can you give me a countdown of 15 seconds to shrug your shoulders or wave your arm? Grandmother, do a stretch if you need.
Pardon? You want something now? As loud as you want for the next one? Okay. Green Party.